today we're going to do a bunch of bites on cybersecurity and some sort of practical tips. I can definitely talk for England, so I'm going to try and keep it short. If you have any questions at the end, please feel free to chuck them in the chat and we'll sort of try and save some time at the end to work through them. If you have anything that you sort of more want to just have a one-to-one chat with me, please feel free to book a meeting. We're going to put a link in the chat probably now and towards the end, so you sort of have a couple of opportunities to book in a consultation with me. I know some people here are sort of existing customers as well, so if there's anything you want more information on, or if there's a product I talk about, please feel free to reach out to your account manager. And for anyone who's not a current customer, like I say, just book in that consultation with me and we'll talk about how we can help you. Okay, so just to quickly introduce myself, my name's Oliver Bradshaw and I'm one of the account managers over at Qlic IT. I've been with Qlic for around about 5 years now, so hopefully I know what I'm talking about. There's definitely some more technical people than me who've sort of help everything keep running and help us put together presentations like this for you all. Just want to give you a bit of an introduction to Qlic and why are we the right people to talk to you about cybersecurity and sort of specifically focused towards the third sector. So we have over 20 years experience in the sector. We started in around 2002 and we're now looking after around 400 charities across the UK, and we also work with some businesses, some SMEs as well. So but like I say, we primarily work with charities and we do that really well, and we can use the information we gain from one charity to help out all of the others, and that's sort of what we try and do, is around being sort of collaborative like that. What do we offer? So we offer managed and co-managed IT support. We do cloud migrations. We specialize in the Microsoft 365 and Google environments. Quite a lot of what we do lately, especially, is around sort of the more consultation side of things. So obviously, cybersecurity, like we're talking about today, is absolutely massive. So we have worked with some of the techs within the organization, and we sort of put together what we deem to be best practices for the sector, and that's sort of what we take to all of our existing customers. And for all new organizations that join, we sort of conduct something called a best practice analysis, which is almost like an MOT for your system. We also do telecoms as well, so we can do everything from VoIP to broadband and mobile phones, Teams calling, whatever telecoms needs you have, you can also reach out to us, and that's obviously for existing customers or for new customers. But our ethos is really around trying to make everything as easy as possible. So we're a telephone-centric IT support team. You can call us with any issues you have, no matter how big or small, and you're straight through to an engineer. So you don't go through to a call handling service. You're directly to a first line or second line engineer who will jump straight onto any issues with you and sort of help you fix any problems you have, whether it's a breach like we're going to touch base on today, or if it's just something even as small as how do I save this Excel document, we're there and just straight through to that engineer. When we talk about cybersecurity, I think a huge misconception, especially within the sector, is that a lot of charities think they're too small to be targeted by cyber criminals. But the reality is, because of limited funds and they know that you'll have less systems in place to be protecting yourself, small charities are often the most targeted. And like I say, charities, I think it is the third most targeted sector, and that's behind healthcare, and I forgot who the other one is. But I know that charities is actually the third one, and over 30% of charities in the last year reported that they had some level of cyber breach or attack. And with the data you hold, because obviously it's going to be a lot of data on people you support, so it's going to be on donors, beneficiaries. All of that information is basically what attackers want, because they know that once they get that, it's such personal information that they can hold that data to ransom, or they can sell it on the dark web. I think the main takeaway for me is really no charity is too small to be attacked. And like I say, you really and truthfully, small charities are the most attacked, and See, that is unfortunate, and you're trying to do a nice thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and sort of see what can you both do completely for free to help your organizations or be on top of a lot of cyber incidents, and then where can you allocate resources if you do have some resources that you can sort of enhance your current security and setups. So what are some of the most common cyber threats? Obviously, the biggest, and I know everyone will experience one of these, and you probably already know exactly what I'm going to say, is phishing emails. Phishing emails have come a long way since probably 20 years ago, when you would get an email and it would be from a Nigerian prince who he wants to give you £1 billion. It's come a long way since then. So now phishing attacks are more around making users click on links or open dodgy attachments. Phishing emails are crafted to trick staff into clicking malicious links or sharing sensitive information. Often attackers will impersonate someone as well, so they may be pretending to be your manager to sort of ask you to click on a shared link that then they'll grab your details from and sort of have access to your systems. Another big one is ransomware, and what ransomware does is once they get into your systems, no matter how they get in, whether that's through you giving your credentials or clicking on a link, they then go into your shared data and encrypt it and hold it to ransom. So they will then ask you to pay £1 million to release all of your data, and unfortunately, not many. I think it's around 4% of people who actually pay a ransom get their data back after. So again, hopefully it shouldn't get to that point. You should have systems in place where even if your data is encrypted, you have backups so you can sort of revert back to them if you need to, and you don't have to pay the ransom. But like I say, we'll talk about that slightly further on. Probably one of the biggest ones at the moment, and I actually saw something on the news about this, I think it was last week, is social engineering. And I think when we talk about cyber attacks and all of this, you sort of think about older people being the most targeted, but with social engineering, it's easier than ever for the younger demographic to be targeted, and that's because they put so much information online. So I saw one, and it was a young lady, and she had her bank accounts hacked, and they were able to do it through going onto her LinkedIn, onto her Instagram, and finding all of the security question answers for her banking. So they were able to find her dog's name, her mother's maiden name. They were able to get around the password, get into the bank accounts, and completely clear them. So, like I say, with social engineering, it is absolutely massive, and you just need to be conscious of what you're sharing online. Obviously, I'm not going to sort of touch base on online security like that, but you need to make sure that the questions that are sort of any questions on there isn't information that's just readily accessible to anyone if they look you up on Facebook. Another big one is when you are attacked, your sort of credentials are put into a honeypot on the dark web. So all other hackers then have access to your passwords, and that's through the credential stuffing. Once you have a breach, all of those passwords go onto the dark web. Like I say, other attackers can then log into your account and start doing anything they want to with your data, whether that is holding it to ransom, whether they set an auto forward on your emails, or they sort of try jumping sideways into other people's mailboxes until they get to someone who they deem the most lucrative, and that's whether you have the most access to organizational data, or you're on the finance team and they know that they can then just get straight at money and change invoices. And we're going to touch a bit more on unpatched software towards the a couple of slides time, but it's really important that you're on top of all updates, whether that's for operating system, whether that's for your Microsoft apps, your Google apps. It should all be happening automatic, but you need to be on top of it because it's patching known vulnerabilities. A product that we recommend to everyone is called Proofpoint. And this is something that we roll out to customers who want to actually test and train people on phishing emails, which, like I say, is probably the main threat facing charities at the moment. It's really important that you're doing regular training for your staff, and something like Proofpoint, even if you don't use Proofpoint, is really good at that because it will allow you to not only train but also test. And You can then, as a sort of admin or as an overseer of the organization, you can see stats on, okay, we've sent out this phishing testing email to all of our users. Who's clicked on links? Who's entered credentials? And it will tell you all of this. And then those users get additional training. So you're not only training, but you're testing, and that's sort of a massive benefit to every organization. And like I say, phishing attacks are more prevalent and bigger than ever, especially with the use of AI. And there is AI bots that can create personalized emails to pretend to be your manager and send it to everyone within the organization. And it happens within seconds now. So it's a lot easier for hackers to actually attack organizations. So I wanted to sort of bring a real world example of an organization who unfortunately had a massive cyber attack, and I'm sure everyone here has heard of it. It was the Co-op. It happened back in, I think it was April, and for them it led to massive consequences. And there is things that I think we can take away from this, and the sector can take away as well. And that's that no organization is too big or too small. And like I say, the Co-op have got tens of thousands of staff, which is tens of thousands of people who are a target for hackers. And not only did the Co-op lose out on the ability to order stock, which resulted in them missing out on 206 million in lost sales, they also then fined 17.5 million pound when they then had to report it to the ICO because they lost customer data. And that was the biggest thing, is what, as a result of the breach or the hack, what was lost. And for the Co-op, everyone who had a club card, all of their details were leaked online onto the dark web. And luckily, the Co-op only really store data on your name and your email address and maybe your phone number. They don't store banking details, but you can imagine if they did, that would be an absolutely massive leak, and that would affect millions of people across the UK. So the fine would be even larger. But not only that, they obviously lost face because all of those club card holders, all of the people who went into the stores, you couldn't buy what you wanted to buy. You sort of don't have faith in that organization anymore. And the Co-op are going to bounce back. It's going to be easy for them. But for a smaller organization like a charity, sometimes it only takes one breach to be completely devastating for your organization, and it's a lot harder for smaller organizations to recover from that because you don't have the financials to sort of make all of these fixes and make the changes, and it's a lot harder for you to turn around to everyone who was affected and say, yep, this is what we've done to fix it. So like I say, no organization is immune. Even large organizations like the Co-op and M&S have been targets of attacks, and the results of that are devastating for a lot of organizations. It's really important that you have a response plan. So what happens in the event of a breach? If you're breached today and someone gets access to all of your data, what do you do? And for all of the organizations we look after, that would be Qlic, and you have a dedicated engineer who will sort of work with you through the breach, see what's happened, see who's affected, and then what can you do to fix it. A lot of the time, if sort of data's been encrypted, which is huge, or data's been deleted,
as a
you want to have
result,
something like a backup in place. But it's knowing what you need to do, and that's what sort of where we come in. So like I say, book a consultation with your account manager, or book a consultation with me if you don't currently work with us, and we can work to get you something like that in place to sort of have a response plan and what do you do in the event of that breach. Some quick wins for everyone here, and what can we all do to make our organizations more secure. And that's not just within sort of your 365 environment. It could be within your payroll systems, it could be within your CRMs, is making sure every user has strong passwords. And if you can set up MFA, it just adds an extra layer of security. So make sure passwords are secure, get the MFA in place, is massive. On devices, you want to make sure that everyone is updating them as regularly as they can. You can manage this through something like Microsoft Intune, so you can force people to do operating system updates to patch the latest known threats, or you have a policy in place where it says people need to sort of update within sort of 5-10 days of a update coming out. I've already briefly mentioned it then, but having a backup in place in the worst case scenario, if all of your data is deleted or if it's held to ransom, how devastating is that going to be for your organization if you can't get all of that data back instantly? Having a backup in place, which is stored outside of the environment you work from. So let's say you use SharePoint, you need to have a backup completely external to SharePoint that's saved externally as well, so that in the event of a breach, we can lock down their accounts and roll back all of the data, so you know that you at least have a snapshot of all of your data from the same day. And we see it a lot where people update things, a lot where people take a backup once a month, but then you could potentially lose out on a whole month of data that people have been working on as well. So it's all things to consider. It should be automatic and it should happen multiple times a day for things like backups. But the biggest risk that everyone is going to face at the end of the day, you could have every single thing set up perfectly, is going to be users. If users are clicking on dodgy links and giving their passwords and sharing accounts, it's going to be the biggest risk you face. So you need to make sure that you're doing regular training, not only on things like phishing, but on security and those best practices, and making sure people aren't sharing their passwords and they're sort of keeping an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. And there's a lot of different training you can do, but it's just important that you're not only doing that, but you're regularly doing it, because things are changing constantly in the cybersecurity landscape. The last thing on here is actually around access. So what do people have access to within your organization? It's something you may want to go away from this and actually think about, because if all users have access to all of the data within SharePoint, Google Drive, Dropbox, all it takes is one user to be breached and you may not notice, and the hacker will have access to all of the data that your organization holds. So you want to make sure that people only have access to what they need access to, and that you take away access if they don't need it anymore. And you almost want to do it on a zero trust basis. You give people access when they need it, and you take it away the second they don't anymore. And then some device security basics. So you need to make sure that all devices that are being used have an antivirus. If it's an organizational device, you need to have a solution in place, whether you're using something like Defender or Sophos for your antivirus. You need to keep devices up to date, like I mentioned before, and ideally that should be automatic. It shouldn't be something that the users have to go into their settings and do the updates. It should be centrally managed, and that is absolutely key to making sure devices are secure, because Microsoft and Apple are constantly releasing updates for your devices that patch known threats. Another big thing is not ignoring security warnings. So whether you get a pop-up from the operating system, from your antivirus, or from your browser, let's say you're visiting a website and it says that the website doesn't look secure, that is often early warning signal for malware, risky downloads, or a suspicious site. So you need to sort of build in the habit of stopping, reading the alert, and then following the recommendations. And in some cases, if you're not sure, who do you call to sort of find out if something is right or if it is suspicious? Call your IT support team. If you don't have one, who do you go to? It could be a manager who sort of is more aware of sort of threats than anyone else. So you just need to sort of plan for who people need to call. And obviously, a lot of the time, we would want that to be us, because then we can have an engineer jump on the device and say, yeah, no, this looks fine. You can sort of open this link or work from it. And then on the flip side, if it's not, you can then purge it from everyone's mailboxes, whether it's a dodgy link. Another thing is reporting lost or stolen devices immediately. So if you're on the train and you accidentally leave your laptop and then you come off at your next stop and you realize that you have left the laptop there, or if it's been stolen, you need to call your IT support team immediately. And again, that should be a policy that you have in place, because it will give us the ability to completely remote wipe the devices if we need to, and we can lock access to mailboxes. If you don't have something like encryptions, then we can sort of make sure we're changing passwords and being on top of that for everyone. And then, like I said before, Matt, is just really important that not only do you have antivirus, that you have encryption, especially if the device is moving. You want to have an encryption in place which encrypts the disk, so if it is lost, at least no one who picks up the device can just take out the hard drive and have access to all of the data that you have access to on that device. Safe working in the cloud. So you need to make sure that you're using your own logins for everything. You don't want to be sort of sharing login details, whether you have volunteers who come in and all work from one device. You want to give them their own mailboxes and their own users for anything, whether that's a payroll system, CRM, because it helps. In the event that something goes wrong, we can actually spot a lot of the more risky sign-ins and suspicious activities. It allows us to respond a lot quicker because we know if a user's signing on from London and then all of a sudden they're signing in from Tokyo. If you've got two users sharing the account, Microsoft may say, yeah, this happens all the time, but at least for us, then we could turn around and say, nope, that's completely suspicious. It's happened within an hour or two. We need to lock down this account because there has been a breach at some point. Like I mentioned before, you need to regularly review what users have access to and make sure there's you don't want to make people's lives harder, but you want to make sure you are limiting access, especially within your sort of document sharing platform, whether that is SharePoint or Google Drive. It just means that if that account's breached, at least they're not going to have access to everything. Remote working, obviously, I mentioned before about making sure people have antivirus on their organizational machines, but I appreciate that a lot of the times in the sector, people work from personal devices and personal laptops. So you may want to have a policy in place, or you can enforce it through Google now, Microsoft now, where you enforce people to work just from the web on personal devices. So they can't download any of your organizational data and they can't work from the actual apps on the machine. They're only working through the web, which is encrypted end to end, which is the safest way for people to work on personal devices. On the flip side of that, you may want to consider using something like a VPN and keeping strong passwords and software up to date. And like I say, that should be a policy where even on personal devices, people are updating, because as an organization, you're not going to have oversight of people's personal devices, which is obviously why you want to sort of make sure that they're working through the web where it is encrypted end to end. And I just mentioned then about a VPN, but sort of working on public networks is also a risk. You want to make sure that if you're working, let's say if you're sat on a train and you're connecting to the train Wi-Fi, or you're sat in a coffee shop, you only want to be doing things like emails. You don't want to be downloading large amounts of data, because you don't know who is sitting on that network watching you doing it. So definitely only download data when you're working on a secure network. And like I say, again, if you regularly work from public networks, maybe include a VPN in your setup. We spoke about it briefly before, but backups are massively important for every organization, and that's backing up not only your data, but potentially your email accounts as well. So this is sort of talking worst case scenario. So if someone does get access to all of your data within SharePoint or G Drive or whatever you're using, you need to have a backup in place. So if that is held to ransom, we can lock access to those mailboxes that are affected, and we have a snapshot from the same day from a backup that we can just roll back to. So again, massively important. Most people have one. Probably 90% of the organizations we work with do have a backup in place. But like I say, you can at least make sure you're backing up your shared data, and then you may want to go down the line of backing up user accounts. So in a worst case scenario, if you lost access to all of your emails tomorrow, how bad would that be for you to carry on working? So it's just things like that to consider. There's some pretty quick wins here that you can do for as an organization. Something that we recommend to everyone, which is down the bottom, is something like a password manager like Keeper. So a password management solution that helps you store passwords for your organizational and personal accounts. It just means it's all sort of held in one area, and something like Keeper actually searches the dark web for leaks of those passwords as well. So it's really important for you to roll out. That's something you can manage yourselves, and you can go away and look into something like Keeper or LastPass, and then it gives you the ability to sort of manage both team passwords, and users can then have their own personal passwords in there, and they only have to remember one secure password rather than 30 different ones, because you don't want everyone having the same password for everything. I'm conscious of time, so I'm only going to talk about one extra thing on here, and that's actually Sophos MDR. And this is probably one of the best solutions for everyone here if you're worried about security, which hopefully everyone is. But to sort of mention Sophos MDR, it's the next evolution of antivirus, and it's so Sophos have a human and AI-led threat detection system that acts on your behalf when something does go wrong. And that's not just reactive like most antiviruses are. They're being proactive. So they're looking at your mailboxes, what sort of things you have downloaded on your device, existing mail forwards that you may have in place. And Sophos will act on your behalf to make sure that that's locked down and secure. And they have come out and said recently that since MDR came out, they haven't had a single MDR customer who has had a breach. So it is massive. It is massive at the moment, and we are recommending it to everyone. So if you're an existing customer, speak to your account manager and see if they can get you over what the pricing is, because it's the best thing you can do for your organization. Everything we're talking about today is in line with Cyber Essentials, and I'm just going to sort of let everyone here know what it is in case you don't know or you've heard of it before but you're not entirely sure. Cyber Essentials is a UK government certification which is designed to help organizations protect themselves against the most common cyber threats. It focuses on putting the fundamentals in place, so making sure that everything you're doing is reasonably secure. So then when you have to report a breach or something to the ICO, they'll turn around and say, actually, yep, you are automatically updating your devices to the latest OS. You do have encryption on the laptop that was lost. So then the ICO may turn around and say, you've reasonably done everything, and we're not going to issue you with a fine. And like I say, something like Cyber Essentials just gives you that peace of mind knowing that you are doing the bare minimum that you should be doing with all of the data. And everything that we recommend as a sort of MSP works in line with Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus.